Okay, part three of the lesson, continuing breaking down what that acronym CRAP means and giving you some pointers on how to apply some of those concepts. So, again, the CRAP test, currency, reliability, authority, purpose, point of view. Check your web pages for each of those items. So, authority. A lot of people will present themselves as authority. They will say, I'm an authority figure in this, I have experience in this, but the question is, do they really? So, authority, two of the ways you can tell whether somebody is actually an authority is whether they have actual experience, documented experience in that area. What that means is they lived it, they were there, they observed it, or they conducted the experiments from which the data was compiled. They ran the tests, right? Very, very important. You can also say if a person has worked in a specific field for a certain measurable amount of time and that's documented, that they're also an expert in that field. The other way people get expertise or authority is through education. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If you've studied a topic for years and you have some sort of credential that shows you've studied that topic or publications in that topic, then you're typically considered an expert. Now, let me underline that with a caveat that education does not always equal expertise or authority in that field, that there are many people who can claim educational credentials, but they either go off the deep end with their research and become very biased or tied to a certain viewpoint, and they get paid for presenting things a certain way. So think about those doctors with tobacco in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Think about the sugar industry hiring medical researchers to skew data to support that sugar's not bad for you. Think of all those things. So you have to be very careful. Education does not always equal authority, or it is a false authority. It's an authority that they're using their credential to basically sell you a concept or sell you an idea. Purpose or point of view is extremely important. And I start this little paragraph section here by saying be cynical. The number one thing to remember about the internet is the way people make a living off the internet is by keeping you watching, clicking, and liking. And so, what will often happen is even if the person has authority, even if they may be reliable in some way, they will frame the information in the most uh, interesting way possible, uh, and will try to make the information, set up the information in such a way to keep you watching, clicking, and liking. Uh, because that's how they make a profit. And remember what I said earlier, if profit is tied to it, which profit is tied to almost everything, but if profit is tied to it, there's a good chance that some of the information is unreliable, no matter how much expertise and research was done. And some of it is probably biased as well. So they will present a certain viewpoint or interpretation of information in order to keep you watching, clicking, and liking. And a lot of the time, they will present it in such a way that it already aligns with what you believe and what you think to be true. So it just supports your bias because they know that's how they keep you watching, clicking, and liking. They will also present information in a way that supports their advertisers because their advertisers pay them based on clicks, views, likes, that sort of thing. So if their advertisers want them to present the information about their product in a positive light, of course they're going to do that. Otherwise, they'll lose their advertisers. So you have to ask yourself, why was this information created? For what purpose? Was it designed to sell me something? There's some red flags that you can see sometimes on web pages, like links that lead you to sites to buy the product or to buy products related to the topic. Um, you can see if it's sponsored or published by an advertiser or a corporation. There's lots of things like that. Now, are these things avoidable? I would say no. They exist in almost everything. I mean, even publishers of scientific journals are funded by corporations and government agencies, so they're going to skew their data a little bit. So your best bet is to use multiple web pages actually to get your data from, or your citations from differing viewpoints. I would say that's even true of research journals as you progress into that higher level of research. If you can get data from multiple sources and see how they correlate, that they support each other, particularly sources that have traditionally different views on an issue, then your conclusions will be more reliable and people will take your conclusions as more meaningful. So, if it doesn't pass the test, don't use it. That's the key. Bad ideas for you when you're doing web page research is to select that first item that appears in your search results. Remember, they're often sponsored. They're paid to be the first thing you see. Using a news website of any sort, they are all biased. Not checking the web page's sources. So make sure you check their links, make sure you check their citations, see if they actually exist. People will post false citations all the time. In fact, students do that in their papers and get busted for plagiarism for doing that. So don't you do that. And finally, make sure that if the site is made by a corporation that profits from the information on the page, that you go into even greater scrutiny mode, that you really become cynical and you start really pulling it apart. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, this takes time. This takes lots of time. Research is time intensive. So depending on when you're doing it in that pre-writing, drafting process, it's going to take almost as much time as the rewriting revision process. And what you may even find as you're writing your essay is the quality of your source comes into question. So you have to go back to the drafting process. So again, that goes back to how the writing process is more cyclical than linear. It moves back and forth between the steps rather than step 1, step 2, step 3. So what's next? Start researching. This can be fun if you choose to make it fun. Use the CRAP checklist that I provide to check every website. Do that assignment, that email assignment, so you can practice it and I can make sure you understand that. And there's going to be some tutorials on integrating research into the essay and using proper MLA in-text and works cited format. Those are going to be very helpful to you as you start to type the draft. All right, hope you found this helpful. Any questions, michael.rather@sewella.edu, or use my office hour discussion board.